Good evening and welcome to Plain Talk. As you would have noticed from the shot at the beginning of this program, we have two outstanding women on Plain Talk this evening. They are Miss Mina Lopez and Miss Selma James. Now what we will do is, for the first part of the program, I will discuss with Miss James matters peculiar to her life, her works, her struggles, and her continuing efforts to assist the cause of women and thereby assist the cause of society. Then, about midway through the program, we'll bring in Mina Lopez, who works with Miss James, and then so we have some common interests in the second part of the program. So please bear with me. Miss Selma James, welcome to Plain Talk. Welcome to Guyana.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be back.
So you've been here before?
Oh yes, I was here in 1958, and then I came for the independence celebration. That's 50 years ago. And I've been here many times after that, meeting with women in Guyana.
Wow. So the first time you came here, 58 years ago.
Yes.
Wow. That's a long time.
It
What
is
has
a
brought
long
you to
time.
Guyana this time?
I came to see my friend Andai. We both did. And I know that she wasn't well, and we were very anxious, and women in London and in the US in our network were very concerned, and we wanted to see her, and we wanted to talk to her, and we wanted to find out where things were at and what she
I'm
was
catching up on
thinking
old
about.
times.
Catching up, indeed.
And how is she?
Well, we found her better than we worried she was. So she's doing okay. She's not doing great, but she's doing okay. And she's still a clever and insightful person and compassionate person. So we're very happy to spend time with her.
She also has a very sharp tongue.
Very sharp. The sharper the better.
Yeah. And she puts me in my place so very often.
Does she?
I like her though.
You're not the only one.
If I may call you Selma.
Please.
You live in London now.
I do, and I have for many years.
But you were born in Brooklyn, New York?
I was, where Bernie Sanders was born in, and in a very similar background.
Okay. Similar meaning Bernie Sanders, of course, is giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money for the Democratic
so.
nomination now.
Well, I hope he wins, because I think he means something new and fresh and more compassionate in the United States, and it certainly needs a little work.
Now, without going into your age, and I don't want to mention the year, but you grew up in a very difficult time
Yeah, in
at
the
that
world.
stage in the world, indeed.
Yes,
the Great Depression.
I was born in 1930, and I'm 85. And when I was born, it was the midst of the Depression.
Yes.
But it was also a time, a most extraordinary time. I was born into a social movement. I was born into a community which was fundamentally socialist.
Your father was a truck driver, I think?
Yes, he was.
And in the trade union movement.
Well, he was building the trade union movement. He started a branch of a union, of the Teamsters Union at that time. He helped build other unions. He was very dedicated to working class people like himself. He was very concerned about social justice, and he taught us to be the same.
What do you remember of Ralph Avenue and Dean Street, this
Oh.
community?
Yes, there were 4 families in the house that where we rented a flat, an apartment. I don't know what the word is here. And it was on Dean Street. But since Dean Street was overwhelmingly white and all the families in our building was overwhelmingly black, sorry, Afro-American, and the four families in our house were white. They gave the house a white address, which was Ralph Avenue, which was white. And so although we faced Dean Street, and although my closest little mate, my closest little friend, Mamie, was across the street and she was black, I had a white address. And I didn't know that. It never crossed my mind until I was well into my 20s and involved in politics and saw how racist my environment had been.
But even at that time in Dean Street, you would have, because of the juxtaposition, black and white, you would have seen at least racism.
Yes, indeed. And in the school that I went to, which was overwhelmingly a black school, and I knew that sometimes I got better treatment than other kids because I was white. I was aware of it. I didn't like it. And it was a question of whether something could be done about it. You know, when you're a little child, you say, well, how can that be fixed? And I think it's a question that people are still asking themselves. And I think that people have found a lot of ways to struggle against it. Black people, white people, brown people, Chinese people, all kinds of people all over the world.
The Workers' Party, you got mixed up, is that the correct word, mixed up, involved? In the Workers'
committed. I wanted, when I was 15, the bomb dropped.
Yes.
Just as I celebrated my 15th birthday, I heard about the atom bomb. We didn't know what that meant, but we knew that the world had changed, and I certainly was committed to being part of changing it. I'd been raised
but not
in that way.
Not in support of the dropping of the bomb, though.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Just what kind of a world is it where thousands of people can be killed
by remote
like that, and the government, and you didn't seem to have control. They didn't ask you if they should drop the bomb. They just did it and presented you with it. They put all the resources into creating it. They didn't ask us if that's what we wanted our tax money to be used for. It was out of our hands, and really it's a difficult question about trying to get the reins back for the population. That's true everywhere in the world.
Of course, it hasn't got any easier.
It's
because it's
worse.
now gravitated into nuclear bombs, and everybody feels that they have a right to it.
And not only that, but proxy wars, where you have wars in Africa that are promoted and armed by the West, but the West is not there, or apparently not there. I mean, people are quite fed up with war, They've had it with war. People don't say we're against this war or we're against that war. They say no more war.
Well, Obama said no more war, and he is, throughout his entire 2 terms, America has been at war.
Obama is a great disappointment to a lot of people. I myself thought that he would do better than he's done. I thought if there was a black president who understood what the story is for millions and millions of people, that he would to some degree represent us, but that hasn't been our experience. And it's really cleared the air for once and for all. It doesn't matter where you come from. The question is, where are you going? That's what people want to know now. And whatever is the complexion, or in fact the gender of the person who is president, they want to know, where are you going, wherever you've come from. And that's why I'm for Bernie Sanders and not for Hillary Rodham Clinton, who has such a bad reputation with poor countries, who promoted a coup in Honduras, who has exploited people in Haiti. Her contribution to the economy of Haiti has been to build sweatshops, from which she and her husband have benefited greatly. So she's not who I want. And she's not who increasingly people in the United States want. And the terrible thing is that whoever elects the president, he's president of the world, but they don't give us a chance to vote for him. We're just landed with whoever they choose. And I think for once, well, maybe once or twice before, but certainly this time, there is a candidate that I would vote for.
Well, of course, you have a candidate in the UK now where you are.
We do indeed. We have a big change in the UK where a man who's always been part of the movement, the justice movement, who's a man who's anti-racist, a man who's fought for immigrants, a man who has fought for Palestinians against the Israelis, and he's head of the Labour Party, overwhelmingly supported by Labour Party people, and we have to fight for him and protect him because, I mean, the Tories want him out, but right-wing Labour wants him out too, and we have to defend him. And I think that people are mobilizing increasingly to do just that and to promote the policies which put people rather than industry first. I think that there is a big mobilization going on, and we, the Global Women's Strike in the UK and in other places too, but in the UK is definitely supporting the change that Labour is trying to bring in.
You lived through the McCarthy years as well, didn't you, in the
I
US?
did. Yes, I did.
What was
As
that
a matter
like?
of fact, that's why I'm in England, because I came to England to marry a West Indian, a Trinidadian, who was deported by McCarthy, and I was. Lost my job. I was told I was a member of a subversive organization, and they told me in the letter, I was in Los Angeles, they told me in the letter that I could appeal their decision, but I would have to go to Washington, D.C. in order to make the appeal. Nobody could afford to go to Washington, D.C. in the 1940s and 50s. It was a very expensive trip.
You said you went with this West Indian. This West Indian was C.L.R. James, the
He was
famous.
indeed, yeah.
Now,
He wasn't famous then.
he's not.
He's famous now.
Posthumously, but he had a big hand after he went to the United Kingdom. He was part of that circle of persons who became West Indian leaders when they came back.
He wasn't so much a West Indian leader as a leader in the anti-imperialist movement.
But he
and
was familiar with them, though, was he?
Pardon?
He was familiar with them.
Yes,
Williams.
he was. He knew Eric Williams from before he went to England. He taught Eric Williams at Queen's Royal College in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
And he advised Eric Williams about what his thesis should be, what he should go for in his PhD. And he was reading to me one day. He said, "Listen to this." And so he read something to me and he said, "Who does that sound like?" I said, "I don't know." And it was Eric Williams's book.
Was it Capitalism and Slavery?
It was, and he wrote the last chapter. He was saying, "This is the chapter
Wow.
I wrote." Well, it was
Wow.
perfectly obvious that it was him. Didn't
Yeah.
sound like Eric Williams at
Yeah.
all.
What has it been like? A couple of days ago, I met Professor Clem Cicheran, and I told him I'd be seeing you here. And he said, "Oh, I know Selma well. We shared a panel in Glasgow."
That's right. There was a conference. It was at the 50th anniversary of the publication of Beyond the Boundary.
Yes.
And they had a conference at Glasgow University, and both of us were asked to speak. There were other speakers as well. As a matter of fact, there was a cricketer, Mike
Brearley, yes.
He gave a brilliant speech.
He was
in
on that
fact.
panel as well.
He was indeed on one of the panels.
Yes.
And it was quite an occasion where we talked about a lot of things, and the meaning of cricket and the meaning of Beyond the Boundary and various.
how is it? Do you feel in any way um, that your life has played second fiddle to this, having been married to this famous Mr. CLR James?
Not at all. First of all, he was my political leader before he was my partner, and I learned a great deal from him, and I also learned to respect what I knew. That was a tremendous contribution he made to my life. He was interested in what I was saying about women really a long time ago, and he said, you must write a pamphlet. And in a few months later, he called me and he said, have you written the pamphlet? And I said, no. And he said, well, why not? And I said, because I don't know how to write a pamphlet. And he said, well, it's very easy. He said, you take a shoebox and you make a slit at the top, and every time you think of something you once said, you write it down on a piece of paper and put it in the shoebox. And after a while, you open the shoebox and put all the sentences together, and you'll have a pamphlet. And I said, okay. I was ready to take a chance. There was nothing to lose except a shoebox. And I did that, and I took off from work one day, took my son to childcare so that I would be free, and then I went to a friend's house to open the shoebox. I didn't want to do it at home because I knew I'd get involved in all the housework that had piled up while I was at work the other days. And I must say, I opened the shoebox about 8:15 or 8:30 in the morning, and by 7 o'clock at night, I had the draft of the pamphlet.
Wow. Well, how many pages?
I think it was 24 small pages. It wasn't...
That's a pretty big pamphlet.
Well, it was good enough.
Yeah.
And it gave me the idea that I could write other pamphlets, which indeed, after years, I did do. But it was a good technique, and I was very impressed with the way he had come up with an idea to help someone like me. And it meant that I could help people like that also, and I have tried to do that.
Was Darcus Howe, CLR's nephew, once described you as that this tiny white woman always asking so many profound and serious questions.
Where did he say that? I don't know about it.
Well,
no.
It's quoted in the an interview you gave to The Guardian in 2012.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't remember it.
He also described you, and is this a fair description? That finger pointing, those flashing eyes, was he intimidated? Oh no, I liked her very much.
Okay, good. I'm glad he did. He did good work in the movement. He hasn't done good work in the movement for a long time. He's been indulging his own fantasies, but he did do good work in the movement. He was involved in a very important case that I was also involved in. It was the case of the Mangrove 9, where 9 black people were accused of conspiring to cause a riot or some absolute nonsense. And he was one of the defendants. And another woman, Althea Jones LeQuant, was another defendant, and she defended herself. Those two, both Darcus and Althea, and I was Althea's witness because I was on the demonstration that they said was a riot, and I hadn't planned a riot, and I was there, and others hadn't as well, and they got off. They were completely exonerated by the jury, but it was because Althea mainly organized the community, young people, young black people especially, who filled the courtroom and gave the jury the idea that these people were not criminal types, but representatives of the community. And the police were completely defeated in their attempt to throw some people in prison unjustifiably.
So your activism started in the 40s? Would that be fair to
My
say?
activism started when I was a little girl. You know, during the 30s, there was a great struggle in Europe to prevent war, and which I didn't know anything about, except that the people in
didn't quite
Spain.
succeed, though, did it?
No, it failed. It failed, and we all suffered as a result. But it was a great effort, and the people in Spain tried to start something and make it happen and fight Hitler, and they failed to do that. But as a little girl, I was aware that this was going on, and tried to save silver paper to send for the bullets in Spain. I was about 6 years old at the time, and I felt that I wanted to help people like myself in another country.
You also have been a serious writer in your own right. You've written Sex, Race and Class, Selma James, and the hidden story of Tanzania's socialist villages, Ujama.
Well, I introduced this and edited it, although it's the work of a man who lived in one of those villages, an Englishman who was entirely dedicated to African people who were really organizing for a better society and were doing very well with it until the ambitious politicians destroyed what they had built. I write when I need to write.
You did a column in The Guardian.
I did. I used to write regularly for The Guardian. Then I had a problem with my eyes and stopped, but I hope to continue again. I hope to start again. I was a very late age, already in my 80s, when I was asked by The Guardian to be a columnist. But when the movement needs something done, I try to assist by writing or editing what other people are writing, trying to put it into words, because you journalists are not always telling the truth about us. So we have to tell the truth about ourselves, and I've got a lot of experience fighting to get the truth out.
But you yourself have been a journalist, so that's all right.
Yes, I have.
Sex, Race and Class, what's that about?
Well, it's about a lot of things because it's 60 years of work, but it fundamentally is that the society is built on a hierarchy, and it's based on gender, it's based on race, it's based on immigration status, and it's reflected in the wage hierarchy, in the sense that white men get more than black men, who get more than perhaps immigrant men, who get more than white women, who get more than black women, who get more than immigrant women, etc. And beneath it all are the housewives and carers who do more work and get nothing at all. So the wage hierarchy always is founded on the unwaged hierarchy, in the sense that it's unwaged women that keep the whole society going, that create the whole human race, that get very little or no help from the powers that be, who are always the poorest sex, who have struggle all over the world to feed their children, who get the lowest wages when we go out to work, who do a double day, that is caring for the family and also going out to work to support them. And that is absolutely unacceptable as a society. A society that is civilized must protect and support the carer, and everybody in society must be involved in caring rather than in profiteering.
In 1952, you said, things can't go on the way they are.
Yes.
Every woman knows that.
That's right.
Things have remained pretty much the same, haven't they?
Oh, no. A lot of things have changed. women are much more aware of themselves, aware of their needs, much more likely to be
But
organized.
on that social, in that social hierarchy, that
The
way,
hierarchy remains, but it is under threat in a way that it never has been before. And I think that we've made some inroads into the awareness and into the behavior of men.
this sounds very much like Bernie Sanders. Things
Well,
can't
maybe
go.
Bernie Sanders sounds very much like us.
And let me tell you, I am a Clintonite.
Well,
I must say that. But I think I bore hearing about Sanders quite diligently as you spoke about it.
right, okay. Well,
Now-
I think he has something to tell us.
Before I bring in Nina Lopez, I want to ask you this. You got involved somehow in the 2012 elections in the United States when someone of Romney's, Obama's team said of Romney's wife that she had
Ah.
never worked a day in her life.
Yes.
But that's true, isn't it?
Well, it probably was true. It would probably, a rich woman doesn't do much work except ordering the servants.
Yes.
And but what happened was that, having raised the question of raising children as work, a lot of women said, I work very hard, and if you don't acknowledge that she works, you are really not acknowledging that I work. And everybody then began to say, oh my God, we'd better really talk about women's work.
And you appeared then on television, the Amy Goodman Show.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
Did it strike you as coming across in support of Mitt Romney?
No, not at all.
Because this
Yeah,
was
in
during the
fact-
campaign, wasn't it?
It was during the campaign, but the point that had to be made was that something is now visible that was hidden before. And whatever of the candidates and whatever candidates were saying, what they had to establish is that work is going on. In fact, 2/3 of the world's work is done by women, and most of that is without wages and without any acknowledgement that the work is going on. And using every occasion for that is very important to us. This was one. I don't think that we sought to determine who was going to win the election by that, but we were determined to win something else, which is acknowledgement, recognition, and building a women's movement precisely to acknowledge that work and to get paid for it.
Finally, to you, Becky Gardner said of you, she still burns with a strange fever. And you were then 82. That's 2012.
Yeah.
Are you still passionate about these issues as you were then?
There's no
Emotional.
reason to change. We haven't won yet.
Selma, thank you so much. And I will now bring in Ms. Nina Lopez. And
Thank you.
So you're very much part of this conversation. So we now have three of us. Nina, you're Argentinian,
That's right.
and you went to live in London in which year?
1976, 40 years ago.
Um,
I'm really a Londoner at this point.
you sound like it.
But I'm not sure about. Well, I suppose I do, because Londoners have all kinds of accents.
Absolutely.
Indeed, it does.
Especially now.
Yes.
You're on the tube and you're not. Half the people don't speak English
Yes,
as you're on the tube.
Exactly.
You, with Selma, you now live in London.
Yes.
How relevant is London to Argentina and the challenges that women face in countries like Argentina, Brazil, if I may say so, Guyana, and what you see in London?
I think it's very relevant, and I feel it's very much the same struggle that we're waging everywhere. Not only what Selma was saying about the unwaged work that women do, which to some extent get more recognition in places like Argentina or Venezuela, for example, which has Article 88 of its constitution that actually recognizes the work that housewives do as being productive and entitling women to social security, which is really a very big step forward. There's that, but there's the issue of women's poverty, which is very true all over the world. There's the issue of the sexism that we face, the violence that we face, domestic violence, other kinds of violence. There are all these issues, and also what Selma was talking about, the election. You know, we have a real problem with elections everywhere because we are not getting the people we want in power.
Well-
Argentina has just elected a very right-wing person, which is heartbreaking.
Well, London, on the other hand, and I don't know that you may have been there for the voting, has just elected the son of a Pakistani bus driver as its mayor.
Yes, I voted for him.
That must be quite a progressive development.
It's progressive that he is a member of the Labour Party, and it's progressive that he's the first Muslim mayor of London, and we're very glad about that. But his policies are not very progressive, and he's rather right-wing within the Labour Party, and has not been very supportive of Jeremy Corbyn, which many people are very upset and furious about.
Yes, sir.
And I'm one of those.
You mentioned...
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say that a lot of Pakistanis and Muslim people are not very happy.
Is that right?
They're delighted that he's become mayor and that a Muslim
right.
has become mayor, and it's a way of fighting Islamophobia, which is what rife and promoted by the government, the Tory government. But on the other hand, they want better politics from a Muslim. They want Muslims to say things that will show leadership for the rest of us, and that's absolutely right. That's what we all want.
I'm going to raise a very provocative question. You spoke of the developments, and you mentioned Venezuela and the business of recognizing women's work.
Yes.
Did that contribute to the decline of the economy in Venezuela and the catastrophic situation in which they found themselves?
No, not at all. That had nothing to do with it. There are a lot of problems in Venezuela, and one of the problems is that it has oil. You know, oil economies are very problematic because they're under a lot of pressure. There's the possibility for a lot of corruption because there's a lot of money around. You have big multinationals that call the shots, and it's very difficult. And I think President Chavez had a lot of difficulties right from the beginning, and there was a lot of pressure from the United States to get rid of him from the beginning, and he did very well to stay in power for all those years and brought in a lot of really good policies. You know, we worked very closely with Venezuela. Selma and I were there, and Daya was there.
Yes, I know.
We worked with women there, grassroots women who were involved in the health clinics, who were involved
Housing.
in the housing, that's right, who did fantastic work, absolutely who were involved in all the electoral campaigns that Chavez did. You know, they called him a dictator. He won more votes than anybody else we know. And he did fantastic, really fantastic, groundbreaking stuff for the whole world. He set a path, really, for all of us.
Well, you also have to know that the kind of problems that Nina was speaking about with the oil economy, I know it from Trinidad. The corruption there is very hard to control. There's money around that is in one particular sector, and people are bought and sold. You know, you buy and sell democracy when there's an oil economy.
That's right.
You know, that's how it is, and it's very difficult to control for the population. And I saw a lot of comparisons, a lot of similarities between the economy of Venezuela and the economy of Trinidad, and what happened in Venezuela, which didn't happen in Trinidad, was that there was a lessening of poverty in Venezuela, and we never saw that in Trinidad. We never saw that. as a
Yeah.
result of the oil economy.
That's right.
The Brazil, after President Lula, the woman president, and she ran into some serious,
sad.
serious problem. She's now facing impeachment.
Yeah, but you know, there's a coup going on in Brazil.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody's saying. There's a coup going on against a democratically elected president who has done absolutely nothing wrong. She's not accused of corruption herself.
Well,
no,
she's
no,
been
no,
ac-
hold on. The people who are accusing her of corruption and who want her impeached are themselves under investigation for corruption. She's not. She's supposed to have presented the budget in a way that was more favorable than it should have been.
She took money from
Which-
one.
No, no, she did not. She's not accused of having taken money. She's not.
No. I didn't mean that she engaged in personal corruption, but
That's
she
important.
did take money from one segment to make the national budget look better
Everybody
than it was.
does that. Tell me one
Well, that
single
doesn't
president
make it
who
right.
doesn't do.
That doesn't
no,
make
no,
it
no.
right.
But that's different from corruption. And the
But
people
that
who are
doesn't make it
accusing her-
impeachable either.
Exactly, and the people who are accusing her are absolutely corrupt, all of them. And you know what happened during some of the impeachment speeches in Parliament? At least 2 members of Parliament dedicated their speech to the very military person who had tortured her, okay, when during the military dictatorship. Those are the kinds of people who want her impeached. Do you understand what I'm saying? They actually said, I dedicate my speech against Rousseff to the man who tortured her. What do you think of those kinds of people? These are the kinds of people that are coming back in Brazil. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying.
It's very frightening.
You know, they want a military dictatorship in Brazil, however they dress it up.
Both of you have spent an enormous amount of time and energy in this movement called the Global GWS, that's Global Women's Strike.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Go on, Selma.
Well,
That's your passion, isn't it, Selma? Or one of your passions, sorry.
well, it's very central. You know, the position of women is of poverty on the whole, on an international level, and nevertheless, it's an enormous job that women are doing, and it is entirely unjust and an unjust basis for society that those who reproduce the human race are so deprived of every right and, in fact, of the right to eat and feed their children. So we say that the work that women do must be acknowledged and it must be paid for, and it should be, you know, I'm wearing a badge. It says pay mothers, not banks. Well, there was so much money for banks. How come there wasn't so much money for mothers? A lot of mothers would need that money and would do very well with it. And the strike is based on that, but it's also based on fighting all the injustices that flow from poverty. You know, if you have no money, then you have no lawyers. Then you have no doctors, then you have no dentists, or you have a lower quality, then you have a lower quality of education and of housing, and your children have less than other children, of clothing, whatever. So that the question of money and money in the hands of the carer is a crucial question for all the relationships in the society, and it's also a crucial question for men. Men benefit greatly, on the one hand, from the services that women provide, but that means they are absolutely glued to any job that they can get in order to provide for the family. It's a kind of slavery, you know, on the one hand, and a kind of servitude for women on the other. And we say that the whole society should be caring, that men should know their children and take care of them. That is very civilizing to think of somebody else instead of themselves on a Friday or Saturday night in the rum shop. So we're we feel that we are part of a struggle that women generally, especially grassroots women, are engaged in, and that struggle is absolutely the foundation of the struggle for justice of everyone. I want to add one thing. When you see young men persecuted by the police, for example, in London, which you know, stop and search and all that, who do you think fights for them? Their mothers, their aunties, their sisters, their daughters. It is always women who are engaged in that justice work, and we want that justice work acknowledged. We want less of it because we want it to be needed less, but it must be acknowledged that it's going on. It must be acknowledged that women really protect all kinds of people from injustice.
But I want to hear you on this. You're not suggesting that there aren't men who do outstanding work in that regard.
Not in the least.
They're not many.
That's the point. I mean, you know, there are men that I know that I can trust with my life who would fight alongside me. We have an organization of men, Payday, which is part of the which meets at the same center that we do, and they say that refusing to kill is not a crime, so that soldiers should not be soldiers. It's they have organized with men and women who have refused to be killers, and who have refused to be rapists, and who have refused rape within the military in a number of countries. You know, I'm not saying, she's not saying, none of us is saying that men are useless, hopeless, etc. Men have been involved
I'm relieved
in
about
all
that.
kinds. I'm very happy to hear your relief. All kinds of struggles that men are engaged in. But you know, the thing is that women's struggles are always invisible as our work. And it's about time that men say how dependent they are on the struggles that we make and on the work that we do.
You're not asking me to make that confession, are you?
Well, why not? This is as good a time as
This is
any.
a good place publicly.
Do not delay.
Can I mention?
Do I say I do? No. But, sorry, you want to say
Yes, so
something?
I wanted to mention some of the organizations that are part of the Global Women's Strike Network internationally.
Yes.
For example, domestic workers. You know, the National Union of Domestic Employees, which was started by Clotilde Walcott in Trinidad, was and fought very hard for the rights of domestic workers and in fact of low-wage workers generally. You know, was a fantastic organizer, part of the strike. There's a trade union organization of domestic workers in Peru, whom I work very closely with, and they see the relationship completely between the fact that women in the home are not getting paid, so they themselves, when they're mothers, are not getting paid for the caring work they do, or when they're looking after relatives, and then when they go out to do the same kind of caring work for strangers, for employers, they get, a lot of the time they don't get paid at all, they get treated as slaves, often starting as children who have been taken from the countryside, you know, to live with people whom they then become slaves for.
Of
Or
course
when they do get paid, they get very, very little money. So they are completely into caring work being recognized. They feel, you know, they're creating time for people who have more money than themselves. And
You were talking about the countries in which you're also part of the GWS IT working group as well.
yes, we work with Haiti very closely. Yes, we do. We do. We supported the return of President Aristide, who was removed by a coup. There you go, another one by the United States involvement. In fact, Hillary and her husband Bill had really a lot to do with what happened in Haiti.
I'm on the defensive this evening, and
Yeah, because you're a
Why do you
Clintonite.
feel this?
I'm a Clintonite.
That's a
That's a
Clintonite.
And I'm a
problem.
man. And I'm a man. That's two things.
No, men are
That's
not,
two
men
stripes.
are not under
Two
attack.
stripes.
Well, Mrs. Clinton is another man.
I want to ask you this question. You say wages for housework. who must pay these wages? Is
Oh,
it the state?
Oh, absolutely the state. The state benefits greatly. Without women doing this work, there would be no workers to work for the state or to work for any of the companies, the multinationals, all the businesses that benefit from our work. You know, we create the workers. Selma said we create the workers, we create the whole human race.
Now, you started this movement for the demand for wages for housework. It started sometime in the early 70s. Is that correct?
That's right.
Um, you've received some fairly hostile reaction from women.
Absolutely. Mrs. Clinton wouldn't like that at all. But you know, we don't go along with the women on top. We're concerned with the women down below, which is where we are. Grassroots women everywhere have really suffered through the austerity, through the economic crisis in the worst ways, and have had to submit them to the most horrendous workload and working conditions. And those women, those of us down here, we need the money, and we feel we have a right to the money. And we don't believe that necessarily women rising to the top means that the rest of us benefit. We haven't had that experience.
But Selma, let me ask you. You brought in Hillary Clinton again, but there are lots of women who have been hostile, who have been anti this wages for housework.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And
Even working class women.
Well, that's not my experience. My experience is not that working class women are hostile. My experience is that women who have risen in the society and who want to put as much distance between themselves and the grassroots do not want to discuss housework, do not want to discuss what their servants are doing. And you know, the Norwegians have a wonderful phrase for these women who've risen. They call them the golden skirts, and they live a life much more close to the life that men live, with much less trouble with pay equity. They get more or less what men get. They get all kinds of perks. They are exempt from a lot of the exploitation and violence that the rest of us face, and they don't represent us. And what they say is not in the interest of women. It's the interest of a very small sector of women who have risen to the top. Most of us have stayed down here.
But your colleague from the Guardian, the London Guardian, I think it was Tweedy.
Yes, that was one.
She didn't quite support you either, did she?
She did. Jill Tweedy wrote a very fine article.
She asked, what do I feel?
Yes, she asked the question of a lot of women who read The Guardian, but she was entirely supportive of what we were doing, and I'm very sorry that she died and we lost the support that she was giving us. But she understood, after a long discussion that she and I had sitting on the floor of my study, she understood that a lot of women don't want to consider wages for housework because they don't want to acknowledge their slave status. That was the point that she made. She said to say that you want wages for housework is to admit to yourself what you are doing and that you are pinned to that job, that you are identified by that job, that you are expected to do that work, and that you either decide not to do it, in which case the people you care for suffer, or you submit to doing it, in which case you suffer poverty yourself. She had understood that, and I think it was really a revelation to her.
She did say, what do I feel? The horrid resentment of the mind bred to slavery and faced with freedom.
That's it.
Now, 72 to now, that's 44 years.
It's a long time.
Where has that movement gone? Has it fizzled out?
Well, I think a lot has
Other
changed.
than Venezuela, where?
No,
Where has this movement gone?
Well, I think there's a new realization now about caring work. Everybody's talking about caring work now.
They
I
are.
think, first of all, a lot of women have gone out to work. Some wanted to go out to work. Definitely women wanted financial independence from men, and that was the way that was open to
But
get it.
that's
Hold
not the
on.
same
No, hold
wages
on,
for
hold on.
housework.
Let me finish my point. So
Sorry.
that has happened, right? So women are in a different position because a lot of women now have their own wages. But at the same time, they realize that they're trying to raise a family and have very little time for it because they're out working all the time. And that they don't want to be pushed in that kind of way, that they want to be able to raise a family and for that work to be recognized. And also, there are a lot of older people, there's a big crisis. There are a lot of older people now who are not getting any care whatsoever and are really parked in institutions which their families feel very bad about. So there's a new look at what should happen with caring, and when we say that we are struggling to build a caring society, a lot of people relate to that. They understand that that is absolutely crucial to how we really want to live, and that we're being prevented from doing that. Jeremy Corbyn, when he spoke, one of the things he said was that we wanted a more caring society. It's like it's people are reconsidering their position. They're reconsidering how they should spend their lives. And should we really be just there working for the market every hour that we have?
And we've had something to do with that change. We've had a lot to do with that change.
That's
Well,
right. That's absolutely
except
right.
except that the person in power is David Cameron, and I'm not sure he's a great supporter
Oh, no,
of
he's
wages
not.
for housework.
No, David
How
Cameron-
did you know that? That
Yes,
has
no.
been very perceptive of you to know that David Cameron, that
Careful.
thief, £30 million to inherit, that man and liar
I don't
and
think
cheat
it was
and
30 million.
racist,
I don't
that
think
he
it was
doesn't
30
agree
million
with
pounds.
us. No, £30 million is what he will inherit.
You know
when
what
he
David
yeah.
Cameron is in favor of? Food banks. That's what has happened under David Cameron. There has been a growth in food banks.
Well, let me call another name from the Labour movement, Tony Blair.
Oh, well, Tony Blair.
From the Labour
Tony
movement?
Blair.
No.
Tony
New
Blair,
Labour.
Tony Blair is a war criminal, so you see they're in good company. David Cameron and Tony Blair. They're very
Really?
good company.
War criminals together. No, we don't go by that. We go by what grassroots women want, say, and do. And women are very tired. What we have found in a lot of places, but even in places like the UK and the United States, women are exhausted from the two jobs that they've been doing.
Now, London has become a major financial center
It is.
of the world. I can remember when I was in London, part of the student union movement, when Jack Straw was the president.
Mm.
I was a member of the National Union of Students.
Another
He was
one.
quite left wing at that time.
Yes,
Jack Straw
he's
was.
changed.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
But I recall standing in front of the Ministry of Education, I think it was called the Department of Education, and shouting Maggie Thatcher Milk Snatcher, and we had
Yes.
the Socialist International and how does the London of the financial center sit with the London of this progressive left movement?
Well, I think that that is becoming clearer all the time, because the London as a centre of finance is also the London of tax havens, and it's the London of people running away
The Panama,
from
the Panama
paying
Papers.
The bankers.
the bankers, and a lot of people now, I mean, a lot of people in the UK now are shocked to find that when David Cameron said we're all in this together, he was telling the biggest lie that he had ever told.
Someone said, "Get on your bike." Which was that one?
That was
Norman Tebbit all the
Norman Tebbit, yes.
Yes, that was all those years ago.
But he
And
didn't say that to David Cameron.
no, he didn't tell David Cameron to get on his bike. He told him, get on your limousine. Anyway, or get on your yacht. You know.
So how do these this
There's
extreme
a clash
left-
coming. There's a clash coming, and there's a clash coming in a lot of places. And I don't know when it will happen. I don't know what forms it will take, but people have had it. People have the internet now, you know. All kinds of places have the internet, and they know what the information
But it's also
is.
true. It's also true that the younger generation, this is the me generation. It's not interested
But
in
you
that
know, I don't think
struggle
that's
anymore.
true. I don't think
No.
that's true at
Around
all.
the
True
world.
anymore.
You know who has been voting for Jeremy Corbyn and who's supporting Bernie Sanders in the US?
I know,
I know.
Young people.
The young.
Young
that
people.
me is finished.
That's right.
That me is finished. It was a moment,
It was
and
a
I'm not
Thatcher
saying it's
moment.
gone, but in general, people are much less racist. The young people, much less racist, much less greedy,
We've got 1 minute, so you've got
much less
20
willing.
seconds, 20 seconds.
Yes, much less willing to sell their souls for the almighty dollar. I think the world
or,
is changing
or the almighty
every
pound,
minute.
or the mighty pound.
You're right.
Well, also,
Nina?
young people.
20 seconds.
Young people are not faced with making money now because they're having it much harder than their parents have had, and they know that, and they want a different society, and they want a caring one.
Ms. Selma James, Ms. Nina Lopez, thank you so much for sparing your time
Thank you very much.
with me and my guests on Plain Talk this evening. It truly was a pleasure. So I always enjoy speaking of London. Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night. Let's continue to have some of the persons visiting us for Jubilee celebrations come on Plain Talk. I'm sure we'll have another non-resident guest next week. So until then, have a good night. Have a great week.